Today, for the first time in human history, more people live in cities than in rural areas. According to a UN study, this turning point occurred sometime in late 2008, and the trend is expected to continue. The UN estimates that by 2050, 64.1% of people in developing countries will live in cities, along with 85.9% of people in developed countries. In this unit, we will explore the profound social and ecological consequences of urbanization. What does urbanization mean for the global environment, and what does it mean for the everyday lives of different people? As you'll find in your readings, these questions do not have simple answers. This is because urbanization is a complex phenomenon that has multiple and at times countervailing causes and consequences. We're going to be focusing primarily on the consequences of urbanization, but I encourage you to do some independent research into the drivers of urbanization as well. After all, the causes and consequences are related. You'll notice that migration from the countryside is a major driver of urbanization both historically and today. While population growth and changing aspirations account for a large part of this phenomenon, you should also keep in mind our discussion of large-scale land acquisitions from earlier this semester. The fact is that rural to urban migration is not always experienced as a choice. The dispossession of rural populations is a key factor in understanding urbanization both in the past and present. In terms of the consequences of global urbanization, three themes stand out. One is that most cities are marked by high levels of social inequality, and this inequality profoundly shapes the lives of urban residents. While inequality shapes the lives of virtually all urbanites, its effects are most stark in cities in developing countries that have experienced rapid growth, usually as a result of migration from the countryside. In such contexts, a significant proportion of the population lives in slums, defined by the UN as urban areas where many households lack one or more of the following: durable housing of a permanent nature that protects against extreme climate conditions, sufficient living space, which means not more than 3 people sharing the same room, easy access to safe water in sufficient amounts at affordable price, access to adequate sanitation in the form of a private or public toilet shared by a reasonable number of people, and security of tenure that prevents forced evictions. As of 2012, the UN estimated that some 863 million people lived in slums worldwide, with the number expected to rise. A significant proportion of urban residents live in slums throughout the global south, but only in sub-Saharan Africa do slum dwellers comprise a majority of the urban population. When you think of life in a city, chances are you imagine the benefits, including the access cities provide to employment opportunities, recreation, social services, and belonging. But urban areas, despite attracting new residents with the promise of employment, are often sites where people experience intense forms of physical and structural violence, including the slow violence of toxic exposure that we studied in our previous unit. Structural violence refers to the hardships, including health issues and social dislocation, that people experience when they are deprived of their basic needs in the context of an exploitative social structure. Uneven levels of exposure to physical, structural, and slow violence in cities reflects broader patterns of inequality along lines of class, gender, race, and ethnicity. In addition to their uneven social consequences, cities also have tremendous but uneven ecological footprints that extend far beyond their boundaries. Much of the food, water, and raw materials consumed in cities must be sourced elsewhere. Cities also produce a lot of waste, much more per capita than rural areas because urban residents are more likely to live consumer lifestyles and eat packaged food. For most urban residents, however, the consequences of their daily lives remain largely out of sight. Few urbanites ever directly encounter the places where their resources are sourced or their waste is processed. Although all cities have large ecological footprints, the precise shape of their footprints is influenced by the cultural, aesthetic, and social habits of their residents. In the US, for example, the cultural value that many people place on having lush lawns and gardens has profound consequences for water, pesticide, and fertilizer use. Our love affair with lawns in particular is a major urban planning challenge in the arid West. If it seems strange that people would insist on having lawns in places where lawns are expensive and laborious to maintain, recall that commercial interests have worked to shape American values to increase rates of pesticide and fertilizer use. Like the social structures that determine our access to resources, the aesthetic values that we use to shape our urban environments are influenced by forces of which we are often unaware. Whether we like it or not, cities are here to stay. And for the foreseeable future, a growing share of the global population will live in urban or suburban spaces. Without rational urban policy and planning, urbanization threatens to accelerate processes of climate change, deforestation, and ecological crisis. Some cities have tried to mitigate this by promoting better transportation, zoning, and code regulations, but the benefits of such measures can be circumscribed by processes of gentrification. The challenge for policymakers is to integrate city planning into broader debates about social and environmental policy, so that cities can provide decent, ecologically sustainable lives for the masses rather than just the few. Can you think of ways that cities can better address the social and environmental challenges we face in the 21st century?